Shiny Pokemon are extremely rare encounters, with a base rate of about 1 in 4,000. Using mass outbreaks, I can bring that down to about 1,300, but they're still really rare. You can't really improve your odds much until the post game, which isn't really helpful to me, as I'm going to be catching all 6 of my team members and completing the game with them. I won't be using any items in battle except for held items, so I won't be using berries or potions. I won't be allowed to terrestrialize, and every Pokemon I catch has to be shiny. If you enjoy this video, please consider subscribing to the channel, and with that out the way, let's get started. First of all, I go and find a Fletchling outbreak. After beating 60 of a Pokemon in an outbreak, you bring your odds down to 1 in 1,300 roughly. This means I can get my first shiny, which is a shiny Fletchling. This one took about 3 hours, and was probably one of the quickest ones to be honest. It's going to be a really handy starter, as Flying and Fire type is going to be really useful against Bug, which is the first gym. On top of that, the second gym is Grass, which is excellent. The first Titan is Rock, which is kind of terrible since we're 4 times weak to it, but I'm actually alright with that because the Titans are really easy anyway. I head straight over to the first gym with Katie and her Bug types, and I'm going to try and stay at roughly the level cap, but in these early gyms it's kind of difficult since you kind of have to take whatever you get out of the outbreaks level wise. Katie's first 2 Pokemon are really no trouble at all. They're actually really easy to take down, and we beat them with just 2 pecks. Her main problem is going to be her Teddiursa. This thing knows Fury Cutter, and that gets stronger every time it uses it, so the longer it stays alive, the worse it gets for us. On top of that, we've only got 1 Pokemon against her 3, so we kind of need to keep our health up before we get to Teddiursa. We can't terrestrialize either, which makes her Pokemon just at a better advantage anyway. 1 peck takes only about a third of her health, but for some reason she doesn't go for Fury Cutter and goes for Fury Swipes instead. I'm guessing this is because the computer thinks that Fury Cutter is going to be a weaker move due to type advantage, even though in the long run it probably would have paid off for it to use Fury Cutter instead. It actually does a fair bit of damage, but we've got the burn off as well. Fletchling's ability is Flame Body, which means that it can burn Pokemon that use a physical move against it. That's how we managed to get the burn off, and with another peck we've brought it to the low orange. That means 1 more peck is going to take it out, but we are pretty close to being beaten now. He managed to get 5 hits with Fury Cutter, but I know we're going to outspeed next turn, and another peck takes down Teddiursa and wins us our first gym badge. With the Bug gym taken down, I decide it's time to get a new team member. I'm actually not going to use the mass outbreak method here, and instead I'm going to head to the sandwich shop. There's a sandwich here that has an electric encounter boosting effect that I can actually use to farm a Pokemon around here. In the surrounding areas of this town, there's actually a ton of Mareep. They come in clusters of 5 or 6, and with the electric power boost that I get from this sandwich, I can just go back and forth from the town, respawning a ton of them. I still have about a 1 in 4,000 chance because I'm not using the mass outbreak method to get better odds, but it actually works out in my favour since I'm spawning so many of them. After a couple of hours, I'd say maybe 4 or 5, I finally managed to find a pink Mareep. I actually recorded this entire video, about 60 hours of work. I got 6 different Pokemon, not even the ones that I'm using in this run, recorded the whole thing, edited it, and accidentally deleted it. I used this method to catch a Mareep in that last video, so I thought I might as well use it in this one too. We've got the static ability and a careful nature on this Mareep. As you can imagine, I was pretty devastated when I deleted that video. Sometimes you just got to take the loss and move on. That's why I recorded this whole video again, and now I'm nearly done with it. I'm actually really happy with this run. We're up against Brassius and his grass types next, and we get a critical hit on our first move. The plan here is to use Flame Charge and get our speed up really high before fighting Sudowoodo at the end. Another Flame Charge takes out the Smoliv in 1 hit too, and we've now got +2 speed and have got 2 1-hit KOs. I decided to switch to Mareep up against Sudowoodo. The main reason I switched tactic here is because I remembered that Sudowoodo has Rock Throw, which would absolutely destroy Fletchling. I decided to send in Mareep so that I could paralyse it and potentially get off a hit before it could do anything. With Mareep taken down, it was time to send in Fletchinder. I was pretty sure I could take 1 Rock Throw without going down, so I started going for Flame Charge. Luckily we got the Paralysis first move, we went for another Flame Charge, but he actually hit back with a Rock Tomb. We survived it way better than I thought we would, and with +2 speed, 1 more Flame Charge, took down Sudowoodo and got us our second badge. After defeating Brassius, Mareep finally reached the level it needed to evolve. It's going to turn into a Flaffy now, and it actually doesn't really look any different, apart from the fact that the gem on the end of its tail is green instead of blue now. With an electric type and a fire flying type, this would normally be a bit of a problem, but we've got the Trailblaze TM from the grass gym, and these Titans are complete pushovers. We take down Clorth with ease, and it's time to move on. Next up is another Titan, this time flying, and it's going to be an absolute cakewalk when I've got Flaffy on the team. Our electric type moves make this really easy. I got it really low on health and paralysed it in time for Fletchinder to take it out with a flame charge. I'm not really going to bother showing much of these Titan fights since they're so easy and it's kind of boring to watch. I decided to catch a new team member next, and I found this outbreak of Marini, which would be perfect. Poison and water type would be a great addition to our team. We've already got electric and fire, so water would be really useful. After about 3 hours of searching, I didn't find a Marini. In fact, I found a Wattrel. You can kind of see from this image, but it's actually got a red back, and it's kind of hard to spot, but luckily I managed to catch it at the corner of my eye. The only problem was it kept flying around and I couldn't initiate a battle. I was actually really nervous that I wouldn't be able to catch it, but after a little while of just moving around, I finally managed to get into a battle with it. After a few Pokeballs, we managed to catch it. It's kind of annoying that it's a flying and electric type since we've already got an electric type and a flying type on the team, but I'm quite happy to use it for now. I think what I'm going to do is catch a 7th team member eventually, and I'll swap it out when it gets to that point. After searching for Marini for another few hours, I actually managed to run into a Finizen. This is actually a better water type, and I'm more than happy to add this to the team. This means I'm giving up on Marini for this run, but I'm more than happy with Finizen. I can get my friend to help me evolve it for a Union Circle later on in the game, so this is actually a really good addition to the team. This means we've now got 4 team members, and even though Wattrel isn't a great fit to the team, he'll be very useful for the time being. I decided to head over to the first team star base, and it's going to be the dark type user, Giacomo. These team star bases can be an absolute nightmare, and their star mobiles at the end are really difficult and can wipe your entire team if you're not careful. Luckily, these first two, the dark type and the fire type, aren't too bad since they don't have too many team members beforehand anyway. They only kind of become a problem when you get to Atticus and his poison types. So for now, we take down the Pawniard really easily with our fire type, and we're straight onto the Starmobile. This means we still have 4 team members, and after a few flame charges, it becomes apparent that Fletchinder isn't really going to do too much here. I managed to take a decent chunk out of his health, but eventually he wore Fletchinder down enough that he could take him down. After this, I decided to send in Flaffy, since we've got the static ability and I might be able to get the paralysis off. If not, we can at least do a decent bit of damage before I send in Wattrel and Finizen to finish off the job. A couple of low kicks are actually doing quite decent damage, and for some reason he's going for Metal Sound instead of actually attacking me. The next low kick takes him down into the orange, and he finally goes for a Snarl, taking me all the way down to the low red. He also drops our special attack, but we're using physical moves anyway, and another low kick brings him into the red too. This is going to spell the end for Flaffy, but I can now send in Finizen to finish him off. Unfortunately, Finizen actually isn't that good until you evolve him. Once you get him into a Palafin, you can start using Flip Turn and switching him out. This way you can turn him into his hero form where he actually really shines. For the time being, Finizen isn't really going to be much help, and I managed to get a dive and then a priority Aquadret to finish off the Starmobile. But without my first 2 team members doing all the legwork, he probably wouldn't have been able to pull that off. After taking down Giacomo, it's time for a rival fight with Nomura. She doesn't become too much of a problem until later in the game, so I'm going to skip over most of these rival fights pretty quickly. I completely forgot that she has a Rockruff at this point, so I had Flaffy in the first spot. It doesn't really matter though, since I taught him Trailblaze for type coverage, and he manages to take out the Rockruff with ease. She sends in her Paw Me next, and I took that one down too. Flaffy still had loads of health and a high speed stat at this point, but she was sending in Florigato next, so I decided to switch out to Fletchinder. A couple of flame charges took it down with ease, even though it was terrestrialized and I wasn't, and with that, Nomura is defeated. Before I head over to the electric gym, there's a little island offshore, and you can actually pick up quite a few stat boosting items. You can also pick up the TM for Hyper Beam here, which is super useful in pretty much every run you'll ever do. I actually went for a bit of a weird one here, and I found an outbreak for Glimmet. I've always wanted a shiny Glimmora, so I decided to come here even though it was super underleveled. This actually turned out to be a bit of a mistake since my team nearly got completely wiped by this thing. It was like 12 levels higher than my best Pokemon, and by the time we'd beaten it, my team was in complete tatters. It even used all the PP for most of its moves. This means we're going to have a seriously overleveled Pokemon, but it doesn't really matter because it's not going to listen to a word I say until I beat Iona anyway. With it being a rock type, it would have been really useful in this fight, but it's probably just going to ignore me. Anyway, we start with our Wattrel against her normal Wattrel, and a couple of sparks take it out. We actually got a critical hit, so we only needed to hit it twice rather than 3 times. I sent in Fluffy next, and Bellybolt's actually going to be really annoying. It's got the Electromorphosis ability, meaning if I don't take it out quickly, it just keeps getting stronger. I went for a low kick and it really didn't do a whole lot, but he's hitting back with Water Gun, which even with a critical hit, also didn't do very much. After a bit of back and forth, I finally managed to take it down, but Fluffy was really low on health. She sent in her Luxio next, so I decided to just stay in and try and do a little bit of damage. At this point, with Fluffy down, I decided to send in Finizen. He's not going to be much help in this fight anyway, so I decided to just try and do a bit of damage while I could. A Surf actually did a decent chunk, and I managed to survive a Spark as well, which means one more Surf was enough to nearly take out the Luxio. It survived with a Slither and finished off Finizen. It would have been nice if that second Surf was enough to take Luxio out, but at least Fletchinder has quick attack and I can finish Luxio off. I decided to switch into Glimmet for our final Pokemon, which is a Terastallized Mismagius. It's going to be pure electric type after Terastallizing, which means rock type moves are going to be super effective. That's if Glimmet actually listens to me, which it probably won't. On top of that, she's now confused me, so even if it does listen, it's going to be confused. First turn it doesn't obey, and then it gets hit with a Hex. It then actually obeys next turn, but hits itself in confusion. Of course. She hits another Hex, bringing it down to the orange, and the next turn, it pretends not to notice. One more Hex takes it all the way down to the low red, and it actually breaks through with the confusion this time, and hits a Power Gem. That's huge as it does massive damage to the Mismagius, but one more Hex takes out Glimmet. This is the problem with having an overleveled Pokemon, is it's not really that useful, because it just doesn't listen. I sent Fletchinder in to try and finish it off, and straight away she confused us again. We actually broke through the confusion first turn and managed to get off a Flame Charge. This means our speed stat's going to go up, but we didn't even need it anyway since we took the Mismagius out with just one hit. That's perfect. That's Iona finished, and we can move on. After beating Iona, Wattrel leveled up enough to evolve. This is actually huge since Killer Wattrel is a really powerful Pokemon. I'm not sure at this point whether I'm going to keep Ampharos once I evolve Fluffy, or keep Killer Wattrel, but we'll see when I get my 7th team member. Next up we head over to the second team star base, which is going to be Mela and her fire types. Luckily for us, this isn't going to be too much of a problem since we've got Finizen. For some reason it was raining as well, which is going to boost our water type moves. I started with Killer Wattrel and easily took out the Torkoal with 2 Electro Balls. She then sent in her Starmobile and started going for Screech, harshly lowering our defense. Electro Ball really wasn't doing a whole lot, and on top of that, we boosted its speed. A couple of Blazing Torques took down Killer Wattrel, and it was time to send in Finizen to try and do some super effective damage. It went for a Screech first turn to lower our defense as well, and I decided to just go for Surf since it was our best water type move. It actually didn't do quite as much as I was hoping, and after a couple more Surfs, we were finally able to take out the Starmobile. I honestly thought that would be a little bit easier, but Finizen isn't really that powerful until I evolve it. We've got another Titan next, and this time it's going to be the Steel Titan, Orthworm. We managed to take this one down with ease since we got a Fire type on our team, and with Arven's help, we finished it off. Fletchinder's actually getting really strong now, and I can't wait to see this thing once it's a Talonflame. I absolutely love that shiny. We head over to the Water type gym next, and we've got Killer Wattrel and Fluffy on our team, so this should be really easy. I start with Fluffy, and he starts with his Veluza. This thing's actually quite strong, and if you're not careful, it can take out one of your strongest team members, like it did with my Fluffy. I barely did any damage to it, and this is a terrible start. I sent Finizen in, and the Veluza actually took Finizen down too. It's time for Killer Wattrel to come in since I'm not messing around anymore, and I go for a Spark, taking the Veluza down to the low red. We also get the paralysis off, but unfortunately it breaks through and gets an Aqua Cutter, taking nearly half of Killer Wattrel's health. One more Spark's going to be enough to take down the Veluza, and it should be easy running from here. He sends in his Bug Trio next, and Electro Ball takes it nearly down to the red, and another one finishes it off. This leaves him with just one more Pokemon, and it's going to be his Crabominable. He's going to Terastallize it into a pure water type, which works well for us. This means I can start going for Electro Balls and try and do a bit of damage to it. We actually took it all the way down to the low red with a critical hit in just one hit, but it hit back with a really powerful Crab Hammer, finishing Killer Wattrel off. This is a bit annoying, but it's got such low health now that my last 2 team members should be able to take it out with ease. I sent in Flichender and went for a quick attack. That was more than enough to finish it off. That's 4 gym badges complete now, and that means that Glimmet should start listening to me now. On top of that, after beating him, Glimmet actually evolved into Glamora. This is one of my favourite new shinies, and I can't wait to start using it properly. Atticus is up next, and this is where the team starbases start getting really difficult, so I did a bit of training and evolved my Flaffy into Ampharos. I actually really love this shiny. It's way better than the previous one. It's time for Atticus now, and even though I could have evolved my Finizen at this point, I need to organise with my friend when I can actually do the Union Circle, so I didn't evolve it just yet. I actually completely baffled Atticus with this one since he kept going for Sucker Punch, but I was using Priority Aqua Jet, so after quite a few hits and a critical hit at the end, we managed to take Skuntank down since his Sucker Punch just kept failing, and he just kept using it. He sending in Muck next, so I decided to switch to Kilowattrel and started going for Sparks. It's not doing a whole lot of damage, but we did get the paralysis off, which is going to come in handy. We managed to get paralysis off first turn and he couldn't do anything, so I went for another Spark, taking him nearly down to half health. He got fully paralysed for a second time in a row, and another Spark takes him into the orange. He finally actually hit us with a Sludge Wave, and it did pretty decent damage, but by this point, Muck's days are numbered. On top of that, we got a third paralysis, and another Spark finished off the Muck. That actually went really well, and we got really lucky on that one. He sends in a Reverum next, which makes absolutely no sense since his Starmobile's a Reverum anyway, so I don't know why he's got 2. He triggered our Flame Body ability, which managed to get the burn off, which is going to lower his attack stat. He did manage to get the flinch off, which is quite annoying, and after hitting a Sludge next turn, he got the poison as well. Fletchinder finally gets a chance to attack, and hits a Flame Charge. It really didn't do quite as much as I was hoping, but we managed to hit another one next turn, taking him all the way down to the low red. Unfortunately, he's not quite in range for the burn to kill him, and he takes Fletchinder out with another Sludge. It's time to send Finizen back in since I've got Priority Aqua Jet, and I can hit him first, finishing him off. All he's got left is his Starmobile, but as I know from previous runs, these things are really dangerous. We go for an Aqua Jet and it does absolutely nothing. He then knocks out Finizen, and I send in my Glamora now. It should start listening to me at this point, but Spin Out is actually doing quite decent damage even though we're quite high level. I went for a Hyper Beam next turn to try and do some decent damage, and it really didn't do quite as much as I was thinking. On top of that, we have to recharge next turn, so he's actually doing really decent damage to us now. I decided to go for another Hyper Beam since even though it wasn't doing as much as I was hoping, it's still doing quite a lot. We missed the first one, but then we actually managed to get one off the next turn, and he's really not doing much damage to us since he keeps going for Flame Charge. He finally managed to take down Glamora, but at this point, he's on the low red, and I still have team members. I sent in Ampharos, who's still at full health, and immediately went for a Thunder Punch. He hit a Noxious Talk, which didn't even get us down to half health, and Thunder Punch takes him within range for one more to finish him off. That is absolutely perfect, and we've actually managed to take out Atticus first try. I wasn't really expecting that. Atticus is normally a bit of a roadblock and beats me first time, and I normally have to train up before I can come back and beat him. It's time to move on to Larry next, and this is a pretty easy fight normally, but his Staraptor can actually be quite dangerous with its facade. He sends in Kamala first, and normally he'll go for Yawn with this one. He actually went for a Slam first turn, but didn't manage to get the paralysis off. Another low kick takes him into the orange, and he goes for Yawn this time. One more low kick should be enough to take him out, but it wasn't. I think if I got a high roll there, I probably would have beaten him. For some reason he goes for another Yawn, even though it's not going to do anything, and he puts us to sleep. A few turns later we woke up, and we hit him with another low kick, finishing off the Komala. Ampharos is at about half health now, and for his next Pokemon, we're going to send in Finizen. I still haven't evolved it at this point, but it should be pretty useful against the Dunsparce. At the very least, I should be able to do a decent chunk of damage before switching into my other team members. Surf doesn't do quite as much as I was hoping, but he just goes for Glare first turn. As long as we can break through the paralysis, that shouldn't be too much of an issue. Unfortunately, Hyper Drill is a big issue and knocks Finizen out in one hit. I decided to send in Kilowattrel next and start going for Electro Ball. Kilowattrel should be strong enough to take out the Dunsparce, but after a Hyper Drill takes us close to half health, it's getting a bit dangerous. Another Electro Ball leaves him with a Sliver, and Hyper Drill leaves us with a Sliver too. We outspeed with an Electro Ball and finally take out the Dunsparce. I decided to leave Kilowattrel in since he's so low on health at this point that he's probably not going to be useful in any other way, so I might as well just keep him in and try and do a bit of damage. I'm not sure who's going to outspeed here, but luckily we do, and we get a spark off. I was hoping to get the paralysis there, but it didn't quite work, and he goes for a facade, finishing off Kilowattrel. I decided to send in Fletchinder next. Since we didn't get the paralysis off, maybe the flame body ability can get the burn off. Even if it doesn't do too much damage at the end of turns, it will lower his attack stat, which will be really useful. I went for a flame charge, and it didn't really do much, but it did take our speed high enough that we could outspeed next turn and hit another one. He finished off Fletchinder, and I sent in Glamora next. I actually don't think Staraptor has a single move that can do decent damage to Glamora, and he goes for a facade, which is not very effective. I also taught Glamora Rock Blast, and it should actually come in really handy here. We only hit 2 out of the possible 5 hits, but next turn we should be able to take it down. One more Rock Blast hits another 2 hits, and that's Staraptor finished and the normal gym beaten. That's 5 gym badges, and we're well on our way to becoming a new champion. After this fight, you're actually forced straight into a battle with Nomura without even having a chance to change your team. I normally prepare for this, but I completely forgot and had Ampharos up first against her Lycanroc. Even with the type advantage, her Lycanroc still went down to a low kick. I then sent in Kilowattrel, who proceeded to wipe her entire team with dual wing beat. Like I said earlier, Nomura doesn't really become much of a threat until later on in the game, so I just skipped over this one pretty quick. On top of that, Fletchinder finally evolves straight after into one of my favourite shinies, Talonflame. I know it's not that different from the original, but I just think it looks really cool. Rhyme's up next, and this is going to be a double battle. The trick with this one is to try and make sure that her final Pokemon, Toxtricity, comes out on its own. She gets an Omni boost around that time, and if she's got 2 team members on the field, it's pretty bad for you. I decided to use Surf with Palafin here, since even though I'm going to hit Ampharos, it's not going to do too much damage, and it lets me break Mimikyu's disguise while also doing damage to Banette. I can then use a Thunder Punch on Banette and take him down to the orange. Finizen then went for a priority Aqua Jet, but it didn't really do much. Luckily, Banette tried to use the Sucker Punch on Finizen, so it failed. Ampharos then used the Thunder Punch to finish off the Banette, and Mimikyu set up a light screen. She then sent in one of her most annoying Pokemon, Houndstone, so I went for a priority Aqua Jet and a Thunder Punch. Luckily, a critical hit took it all the way down to the low orange, and with a slash taking Finizen down to the low red, Houndstone went for the move that makes it annoying, Phantom Force. This means it disappears, and it's kind of annoying to try and hit it, since you don't know if you're going to outspeed or not. Mimikyu then took out Finizen, and Houndstone's Phantom Force hit Ampharos. I then went for a Thunder Punch, taking the Mimikyu really low on health, and I sent in Talonflame. Mimikyu's slash is going to take Ampharos really low, but static means that it gets paralysed. This then means Talonflame can go for a Flame Charge, taking down the Houndstone, meaning she can't attack again this turn. With Houndstone out the way, it's really important that I take out Mimikyu before Toxtricity comes out. This has been set up perfectly, and now it's a 2v1. Even though she gets an Omni boost, we should be able to win this easily. She terastallizes into a pure Ghost type, and a Flame Charge takes a tiny little chunk. I then go for a Trailblaze, which gets a critical hit and takes her down to the orange. The 2 team members I have out at the moment can't really do much to Toxtricity, but he can't really do much either, and he just keeps going for Hyper Voice. I go for another Flame Charge and Trailblaze next turn, but without the critical hit, we're not able to do half its health. It then goes for a Hyper Voice, and Talonflame holds on with just 11 HP, but Ampharos falls. This means I can send in Kilowattrel, and I've got 2 really fast birds on the team. One Flame Charge takes it down to a Slither, and then Kilowattrel using an Electro Ball to finish it off. This is the end of Rhyme, and this is our 6th gym badge. That one actually went a lot better than I thought it would. It's really cool having both these birds out at the same time. At this point, I was able to organise with my friend to level up my Finizen in the Union Circle. You can actually see his shiny Mew in the corner of the screen there. After levelling up once, Finizen evolved into a Palafin. It doesn't look much different now, but in its hero form, which you'll see in a bit, it looks really cool. I found a Bagon Outbreak, which is going to be fantastic for our next team member, and while I was looking for one, I actually found a shiny Qfant. This Orthworm got in the way, and when it disappeared, I was actually terrified that I'd lost it. Luckily, it came back, and we managed to catch it. This is actually a really cool shiny, and I'm super happy with it, even though I wasn't looking for it. Steel type's going to be really useful for the team, and I actually just really like this Pokemon in general. It was at this point that I actually realised that my whole team was becoming a bit of a rainbow. I had a really nice mix of different coloured shinies. The only thing I was missing was green. That's when I ran into my 7th shiny Pokemon, Bagon. This is going to be really good because I can actually get rid of one of my electric types now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep Ampharos on the team for the time being, and later on I'll switch back to Kilowattrel. You can see here when I go for a picnic that this team's really aesthetically pleasing colour wise, which is quite funny because I didn't do that intentionally at all. After a little bit of training, I was able to evolve my Bagon into a Shelgon. It looks kind of rubbish as a shiny, it's got like a slight green tint to it, but once it evolves into a Salamence, it's going to look really cool. For now, we're going to keep it as a Shelgon so that it doesn't overlevel too much, and after training up a bit more, we managed to evolve Cufant into a Copperajah. I can now head over to the ground type Titan, and using Palafin's new flip turn move, I can change it into its hero form, which looks absolutely sick. It's nice to finally be able to see this Pokemon's full potential, as it's probably one of the best water types in the entire game. It's just a bit annoying that it takes so long to evolve and to set up properly, but once you have it at this point, you can send in Palafin early, use flip turn, and then you've got it in its hero form whenever you want to use it later on in the fight. I went into the summary to take a better look at it here, and it just looks so cool. I really like the colour scheme on this one. I went for a Surf to try and do some big damage to the Earth Titan, and unfortunately Arven Scovillain was collateral damage. I took that down too, and then with one more Surf next turn, I was able to take down the Earth Titan with ease. Palafin's going to be a great addition to the team, and this is just the start. It's kind of annoying that it changes back to its original form at the end of the fight, since it would have been cool to look at it at the end here. It's time for the 7th gym now, and it's Tulip's Psychic types. This is kind of a dangerous gym, but I think my team's pretty well set up for it. She starts the fight with her Farigiraf, and I'm going to start with Palafin. This way I can use flip turn straight away, and then it'll be in its hero form whenever I switch it in later. I'm not actually looking to do that much damage here, and my plan is to switch into Copperajah, who will actually take really low damage from anything psychic. That's exactly what happens, and the Farigiraf goes for a crunch next turn, which barely does any damage as well. I can then go for an Iron Head, taking it all the way down to the red, and after another crunch takes us into the orange, one more Iron Head finishes off the Farigiraf. This is a really good start, and she's going to send in her Sparthra next. I decided to stay in with Copperajah, and a Shadow Ball took us down to just 40 HP and lowered our special defense. I then went for a Heavy Slam, which turned out to be a really good choice since I took it out in one hit. Gardevoir's up next, and I completely forgot that this thing's part fairy type and sent in Shelgon, who had crunch. I was planning to just hit it with a crunch and do huge damage, but obviously it caught me off guard. I then decided to send Palafin back in, and again catching me off guard, it had Energy Ball. I was not expecting that, so I went for a flip turn to switch out Palafin, and actually ended up taking down the Gardevoir. She's down to her final team member now, which is her Terrastallize Flogress. I decided to send Ampharos in, who got hit with a pretty powerful Moonblast, but actually tanked it pretty well. I can then go for a Thunder Punch, doing a nice decent little chunk. Another Moonblast takes us down to the low orange, and another Thunder Punch takes her below half. That means one more Moonblast is going to take down Ampharos, but that's absolutely fine, he's done loads of damage. I sent Talonflame in next, and I went for our newest move, Flare Blitz. This absolutely destroyed the Floggeress, and even getting hit with recoil doesn't matter at this point since we've won the fight and got our 7th gym badge. That means one more gym and we can head over to the Elite Four. It's going to be the Ice Gym, which shouldn't cause us too many problems since our team's pretty well set up for this. She starts with her Frostmoth, which is going to be 4 times weak to fire, so I send in Talonflame. I start with a Flame Charge to try and get my speed up, and I actually one-shot it, which I really wasn't expecting. That's Frostmoth taken care of, and she sends in Sir Titan next. This thing actually has water type moves, which I completely forgot as well, and a Flame Charge really didn't do that much to it. She then went for a Liquidation, doing huge damage. We went below half health, and I decided to just go for Flare Blitz to try and do as much as I could here. We took her down to the low orange, but recoil and another Liquidation is going to be more than enough to take Talonflame down. It's kind of annoying to lose our only fire type here, but at least I can send in Ampharos next. She goes for an Ice Spinner, which does pretty big damage, but not quite half. One Thunder Punch takes her into the low red, another Ice Spinner takes us into the orange, and one more Thunder Punch takes down Sir Titan. I need to try and remember next time that he has water type moves. I decided to send Glamora in next, as she's going to go for Beartic. Glamora's not going to be too helpful in this fight, so I thought I'll send him in now and try and do some big damage with Rock Blast. If I can get off 5 hits, I could actually probably take down Beartic, but unfortunately we only got 3. She then hits back with an Earthquake and one-shots Glamora. That was kind of to be expected, but my main plan here was to set up the toxic debris so that I could poison her last team member. I then sent in Palafin since I haven't actually put him into his hero form yet, and immediately went for a flip turn. Again, I'm not trying to do damage here, I'm just trying to change his form. I can then send in Ampharos, who's already low on health, and I can just use him as fodder to get taken down by an earthquake. This means I'll get a clean switch into my next Pokemon, which is going to be Shelgon. I didn't actually realise how weak my team was to ice types here. Shelgon managed to take down the Beartic with a crunch, but after terastallizing her Altaria into a pure ice type, I don't think Shelgon's really going to be able to do much now. We didn't outspeed, and a Dragon Pulse takes Shelgon out in one hit. To be honest, that was kind of expected. I actually realised at this point that the Toxic Spikes didn't even poison Altaria, probably because it's in the air, but that's annoying as well. I decided to send in Copperaja next, and after going for a Hurricane, she did barely any damage. That means I can retaliate with an Iron Head and one-shot the Altaria. I honestly wasn't expecting that to one-shot, but I'm not complaining at all. That's all 8 gym badges, and now we just have a few more star bases and titans to finish off. I skipped over Ortega's fairy types really quickly since he was a complete pushover. We destroyed him. Copperaja's actually turning out to be one of my favourite team members, and I wasn't even looking for him. Before taking on Eri, I decided to evolve my Shelgon since we're going to need all the help we can get. I've finally now got Salamence, and this Pokemon looks absolutely sick. I'm so happy with this. Eri's always a roadblock and is one of the most unfair fights in the entire game, but with my team the way it is now, I'm actually hopeful that we can take her out. I've never beaten Eri first try, but there's a first time for everything. These team star bosses are one of the main reasons that I stopped doing Nuzlockes. They can just be so unfair sometimes, and my knowledge of Pokemon is pretty decent, but it's not perfect, and one little mistake can spell the end for you. I'd rather actually enjoy the games, which is why I'm doing these shiny runs now. I decided to send in Palafin first turn so I could switch him out into his hero form, and switched into Copperaja, who can easily take out the Toxicroak. I then switched into Talonflame as she sent in Persimmon. This way I can start going for acrobatics, which I was really hoping would do at least half. Unfortunately it didn't, and she had Rock Tomb, which is really annoying since I wasn't expecting it, and it just completely destroyed Talonflame. That's one of my best Pokemon beaten, and I sent in Ampharos next. This Persimmon still has loads of health, and as it went for a close combat it took us below half health. Luckily close combat lowers both defense stats, and I can then go for a Dazzling Gleam, which is Ampharos' newest move, and take out the Persimmon. I can then send Palafin back in up against Annihilate, and Palafin's now in its hero form since I used Flip Turn earlier. I actually went for Flip Turn again, just to keep Palafin safe, and then sent in Copperaja, who's already low on health. This means a close combat is going to be more than enough to take it down, but it's also going to lower the defense stats of Annihilate. I can then switch back into Palafin, who's now going to do more damage thanks to the defense drops. Palafin also still now has full health since I managed to avoid last attack. That went so well last time that I decided to just go for the same tactic, but luckily with the defense drops we were able to take out the Annihilate straight away. She then sends in Lucario, and I taught Salamence Flamethrower for this exact battle. Unfortunately it wasn't enough to one-shot it, and we did take decent damage from a Dragon Pulse, but another Flamethrower next turn takes down Lucario. This means all that's left is our Starmobile, but as we know, this can be one of her most dangerous team members. I decided to go for Fly straight away for super effective damage, but she just went for Shift Gear, which is kind of annoying since she would have missed her attack. She then outsped with a Spin Out next turn and missed, which means we can then hit a Fly for huge damage. She actually then went for Shift Gear again, which is brilliant because that means we can now fly and avoid damage completely. She is raising her attack to a stupidly high level now, and I think she can probably one-shot Salamance's remaining health. She then went for a Spin Out and missed, and another Fly takes her into the orange. I honestly don't think another Fly is going to be enough, but it doesn't matter anyway since she hits a Spin Out next turn, so we can't even get another one off. This does drop her speed harshly, which means she's going to be really slow, meaning I can now send in Glamora, who's actually going to be quite useful since I can outspeed. She probably would one-shot Glamora otherwise, but what I didn't expect was that she would still outspeed even with the speed drop and one-shot Glamora. That's really annoying, but her Starmobile is so low now that I can send back in Palafin. She went for a Shift Gear next turn, leaving us up for a free hit, and I decided to just go for Flip Turn. Since Palafin's probably going to be our best Pokemon here, I want to keep him safe. This means I can now send in Ampharos, who's only really going in to get killed anyway. He's already on below half health, and as long as I can maybe get one hit off, we're definitely in a really good place. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen, and a high horsepower is enough to take Ampharos out, leaving us with just Palafin. I'm pretty confident we can survive one hit here, but she just goes for shift gear anyway. I decided not to go for flip turn here since we don't have anything to switch into anyway, and acrobatics is super effective. Unfortunately, it doesn't do huge damage, and I'm not confident another one's going to take it out. I decided to go for surf instead, but a combat talk takes us all the way down to the low red. This surf had to kill, otherwise I probably would have lost this battle. Luckily it did, and the Starmobile's been taken out. This is the first time in the history of me playing this game that I've actually taken down Eri first try. That's crazy. The False Dragon Titan's up next, and Salamence makes absolute light work of it. Both of its forms get taken down with a Dragon Claw, and I love Salamence. This is such a cool team member. We can head over to the Elite Four now, and Rika's up first. She's going to start with her Wish Cast, so I'm going to start with Salamence. I decided to go for a fly first turn, just to see what move she was going to use. And that's when I realised that I messed up. She went for a Blizzard and missed, but I was locked into fly, which means she's going to hit me with a Blizzard next turn and completely destroy Salamence. I've made a few little mistakes like that during this run, and I'm sure some of you are thinking, why don't you just look up the Pokemon and their movesets online? But I feel like that just defeats the object of a challenge. I'd rather rely on my own knowledge and try and beat the game that way. I sent in Ampharos to try and finish off the Wish Cast, but annoyingly she actually managed to take out Ampharos as well. This is a really bad start. I'm going to send in Talonflame next since he's not going to be much help in this fight anyway, and at least he can do is finish off this Wish Cast. I went for an Acrobatics and finished it off, and then switched into Palafin. Now that her water type is taken care of, I can use Flip Turn to put Palafin into his hero form, and then potentially wipe her whole team with it. I decided to switch into Glamora since I didn't think it was going to do much damage, but that was kind of stupid since it used an Earthquake and one-shot me. I mean, to be honest, Glamora's not going to be much help against the ground type Elite Four member anyway. I then can switch back into Palafin, who's now in his hero form, and start using Surf to try and wipe her whole team. Donphan goes down to 1, and she sends in Dugtrio next. It actually got poisoned from the poison spikes that Glamora left behind, and it managed to set up a Sandstorm. I'm not really sure how it outsped Palafin, but fair enough. I then went for a Surf and one-shot it, and after a little bit of chip, went for another Surf against her camera up, which is going to be 4 times effective, so it one-shot that too. She's now going to Terrastallize her Clodsire into a pure ground type, which works fine for me, and I went for an Ice Punch, taking it all the way down to the low orange. It then hit back with an Earthquake, which is kind of terrifying, and nearly took Palafin down. Unfortunately, the poison's going to be enough to knock us out. I'm pretty sure the Sandstorm was still going at that point, so that probably would have knocked us out anyway. I sent in Talonflame next, and started going for Steel Wing. Luckily, it hit us but didn't knock us out in one hit, and we were able to finish it off with another Steel Wing. To be honest, Rika was probably one of the most threatening of the Elite Four, and up next is going to be Poppy. Poppy isn't that much of a threat, but unfortunately Talonflame's a bit of a glass cannon, so if he gets hit with 2 powerful moves, he's almost definitely going down. I decided to use him a bit later in the fight and started with Palafin to set up Flip Turn. I then switched into Glamora with a not very effective Play Rough. This also sets up the Toxic Debris, but that's not going to be too much help against a Steel type user. Unfortunately, Glamora doesn't really have much that it can do here, so I just went for a Hyper Beam knowing I was probably going to get taken down next turn anyway. This means we set up another layer of Toxic Spikes, but unfortunately Glamora's going down. It's time to send in Talonflame now, and my plan was to take down the Copperajah with a Flame Charge and boost our speed. Unfortunately it survived, but a Heavy Slam didn't do that much damage. This also means we can get off another Flame Charge and be at +2 speed for our next Pokemon. She's sending in Magnezone next, and this thing's a little bit terrifying with its electric type moves since we're flying type, so I went for a Flare Blitz to try and one-shot it. Annoyingly it survived, but it just decided to go for a Light Screen, which is fine since we're using physical moves anyway. On top of that, I can then hit another Flame Charge and be at +3 speed. That means we're pretty much going to outspeed any team member she sends in, and she decides to send in Corviknight next. Again, I'm going for Flare Blitz to try and get the one shot. It survives with red HP, and the recoil's getting to be a bit of a problem now. She decided to throw and just went for an Iron Defense, so we managed to take the Corviknight out again as well. I then went for a Flare Blitz on Bronzong, and we still can't get the one shot. Annoyingly, the recoil is going to take out Talonflame now, but it's done its job. I can then send in Ampharos and go for a Thunder Punch to finish off the Bronzong, and I decided to switch to Salamence up against her last Pokemon. This is actually kind of silly since she's using a Fairy type, but I actually know she's going to go for Gigaton Hammer here. The main reason for sending in Salamence here is to use Flamethrower, which is going to be super effective since she's terastallized into a pure Steel type. I just kept going for Flamethrower, and after she used the Play Rough doing super effective damage, but not actually doing that much, she then went for Gigaton Hammer and took Salamence down. I wasn't really expecting it to go that way, but I wasn't expecting Salamence to take it out either. This means I can now switch back into Hero Form Palafin and finish her off with a Surf. That's Poppy taken care of, and it's time to take down Larry next. He's now using flying types instead of normal types, and he decided to start with his Tropius. I knew from last time I played this game that Tropius was first, so I set up Talonflame. This way I can just keep going for flame charges and get my speed really high. Tropius decided to throw straight away and set up the Sun for me. Thanks to that, mate. I'm going to go for another flame charge and boost my speed again, and this time take you down since I'm doing even more damage. He's then going to send in Staraptor, and his Intimidate is going to take our attack down, which is a little bit annoying. I actually misclicked here and I meant to go for Flare Blitz, and I accidentally used Steel Wing, which did basically nothing. She then got a bit of recoil damage, which means that a Flare Blitz is going to be enough to take down the Staraptor, but actually that probably should have happened last turn. He sends in Oricorio next, and I decide to go for a Flare Blitz. This means Talonflame's going to fall, but I can switch out to Glamora, who's actually going to shine really well in this fight. There's not been many times in this run when Glamora's actually been that useful, and I honestly thought it was going to be a better Pokemon than it was. I mean, it's not a bad Pokemon by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not great either. I decided to switch into Palafin next so that I could set up Flip Turn, and then I switched back to Glamora. 2 Dragon Pulses from Altaria is going to be enough to take Glamora down, and I switch back into Palafin, who's now in his hero form. I can then start going for Ice Punches, and I one-shot Altaria. It's 4 times effective, so there's no surprises there. He sends in his Flamigo next, and terastallizes it into a pure Flying type. That's perfect for me because Ice Punch is going to do super effective damage now. We take it all the way down to the low red, and it hits back with a close combat. It doesn't really do anywhere near enough, and another Ice Punch is going to take it down, finishing off Larry. That means there's only one more Elite Four member left, and it's going to be Hassel and his Dragon types. This guy is normally not too bad, but his final Pokemon, Baxcalibur, can definitely wipe your team if you're not careful. He decided to start with Noivern, and the plan here was to use Flip Turn to put Palafin into his hero form. I didn't realise it was going to outspeed, and a Super Fang took half our health, which is really irritating. I then switched into Glamora, who managed to avoid a Super Fang, and started going for Rock Blast. I thought this would do more than it did, but at least we got 3 hits. It's down to the orange now, and we actually managed to avoid Super Fang again. This means we can go for a Rock Blast, and if it hits 3 times, which it did, we were able to take down the Noivern. Next up is going to be Dragalge, which is actually a really cool Pokemon. I'd be really interested to use it for a future run. For now, we just got to take it down, and I'm not sure what I was thinking not switching Glamora out here, since it goes for a Hydro Pump doing huge damage. I decided to retaliate with a Hyper Beam, doing huge damage myself, but then Glamora falls next turn to another Hydro Pump. I then sent in Ampharos to try and finish this off, and I immediately went for Dazzling Gleam, completely forgetting that this thing's part Poison type. At least now it's in range for another Dazzling Gleam to take it out, and we even got a critical hit, which we didn't really need. He's then going to send in Flapple next, so I just kept Ampharos in to go for another Dazzling Gleam. A Dragon Rush does huge damage, but so does Dazzling Gleam. He then hits another Dragon Rush next turn, and the static gets the paralysis off before Ampharos falls. Kind of annoying, but I send in Talonflame next and go for a Flare Blitz to finish it off. We take down the Flapple, and a small amount of recoil was a small price to pay. He's then going to send in Haxorus, so I'm just going to keep going for Flare Blitz. Talonflame can't really do a huge amount for the rest of the fight, so I might as well just keep going for that. Annoyingly, he had Rock Throw and just took out Talonflame with one shot. I then switch into Salamence and go for a Dragon Claw, one shot in Haxorus. Baxcalibur's going to be a little bit of a problem since it's part Ice type and it's also Dragon type, so it's going to be really effective against Salamence. Luckily, we outspeed with a Dragon Claw and take out half its health straight away. An Icicle Crash is going to be more than enough to take out Salamence in one hit, and that was kind of to be expected. I do still have 3 team members, so I decided to switch into Palafin and go for Ice Punch. I was a little bit twitchy here because I wasn't sure if Ice Punch would actually affect it, but I just took the risk and it paid off. Luckily we managed to take it out, and it's time to take on the champion. In my opinion, Geeta's actually one of the weaker champions in the entire series, but she's still quite dangerous if you're not careful. She starts off with Espathra, so I start off with Palafin. You guys know the drill by now. I'm going to use Flip Turn straight away to turn him into his hero form. This means I can send in Copperaja, who's going to take really low damage from any psychic attacks. She goes for a Lumina Crash, and it does barely anything. It does lower our special defense, which means another Luma Crash is going to do a lot more damage this time. Luckily though, I can go for a Heavy Slam and take out the Espathra. That's her first team member down, and I decided to switch to Talonflame against her Avalugg. Now I can go for a Flare Blitz, but unfortunately it didn't do anywhere near as much as I was expecting, and an Avalanche does huge damage. That means next turn I'm just going to go for another Flare Blitz and consider Talonflame taken down. The recoil finishes it off, and I send in Ampharos to finish off the Avalugg. One Dazzling Gleam's enough to finish it, and I switch to Salamence against King Gambit. This way I can use super effective Flamethrower, but I completely forgot that this thing has Stone Edge. Another Flamethrower takes it down to a Sliver, and another Stone Edge unfortunately takes down Salamence. I was hoping Salamence would have a bit more of an impact on this fight, but it is what it is. I sent in Ampharos to finish off the King Gambit, and as she sent in Go-Go, I realised Ampharos doesn't really have anything against this, so I just went for Dragon Tail. This will make it switch out, and luckily her next Pokemon, Veluza, is weak to Ampharos. This actually worked out pretty well, and I didn't really plan for it. She then went for a Liquidation doing small damage to Ampharos, and we actually managed to get the static off. This means I can start going for Thunder Punches, which are going to do super effective damage. We did over half with one, and then we managed to outspeed next turn with another, which I think means it was paralysed. I decided to switch back to Palafin and go for an Ice Punch against Go-Go, which was kind of a risky tactic, but it really paid off. I really needed Palafin to stay alive since her final Pokemon is a Glamora, and it's going to Terastallize into a pure Rock type. This is great for me since Palafin can just use Flip Turn and stay out of danger every single turn, outspeeding and doing super effective damage. We took it down to half health with a Flip Turn, and we still have 2 team members that we can switch to. I sent Copperaja in, and it used the Poison move, which means it didn't affect me at all. I then tried to go for a super effective high horsepower, but it had a different plan and took Copperaja out in one hit. I then switched into Glamora just as a sort of arrogance thing because I wanted to take out her Glamora with my cooler shiny one, and that turned out to be a mistake as she just one-shot mine. Yeah, this is why you don't mess with champions. I sent my Palafin back in, and another Flip Turn was enough to take down Glamora. That means we're the newest champion of this region, and that fight actually went really well. We still have a few other fights that we need to take care of, mainly Cavil, Penny, Arven and Nomura, but after that we can head down to the Area 0 and take down Professor Churro. Cavil's up first, and he can be a little bit tricky if you're not careful. I started with Salamence so I could go for crunches against his Oranguru, and we actually managed to get the defense drop. He hit back with a foul play, not quite doing half, and another crunch took down the Oranguru. That actually went really well. I then send in Talonflame against the Bomber Snow, who can one-shot with a Flare Blitz. This is 4 times effective, so no surprises there. Palafin's coming in against Houndoom, and I can set him up into his hero form, whilst also switching back to Talonflame, who can then use an Acrobatics to finish off the Houndoom. Houndoom's such a sick Pokemon. He then sends in Poltergeist, or Poltegeist, I'm not sure how you say it exactly, and I sent in Salamence to just finish it off with a crunch. Among Us actually used the Toxic here while I was in the sky, which I didn't actually realise was a thing. That's actually really helpful to know that you can still poison Pokemon in the middle of a fly. We then hit the fly and took Among Us out as well, and this fight is going really well. He's down to just his last Pokemon, which is going to be his Quacksquavel, which he Terastallizes into a pure water type. This means I can send in Ampharos, who gets hit with an Aqua Step, doing pretty huge damage to be honest, but then we hit back with a Thunder Punch. We also managed to get the static off and paralyze, which is probably going to come in handy since this thing has a huge speed stat. We took half its health out, and then we managed to outspeed next turn because it was fully paralysed. This left it with a Slither, and we actually managed to get the paralysis off 2 turns in a row and finished it off with another Thunder Punch. Is it just me, or am I getting really lucky with paralysis in this run? Anyway, with Cavil taken down, we find out that the real Cassiopeia is Penny, and it's time to take her on next. I decided to put Kilowattrel in instead of Ampharos now, since I wanted to give him a chance to shine. I actually think he's a much better electric type, and the only reason I switched him out for Ampharos earlier is because we already had a flying type in the team. Up against Penny, I sent in Copperajah, who got flinched out first turn, and then went for an Iron Head up against Umbreon. This didn't really do too much damage, and then I suddenly realised I don't know why I'm not using Heavy Slam, since evolutions are going to be really light, so Heavy Slam would surely do a lot more damage. It did a little bit more, but not quite as much as I was hoping. She sent in Flareon next, so I decided to set up Palafin. I nearly one-shot it, and I sent in Glamora, as she just went for a Flare Blitz. This is great as it sets up the Toxic Spikes, and on top of that, it means that she's going to get hit with Recoil. Unfortunately, it's not quite enough to take down the Flareon, so I had to use a Venoshock next turn. Vaporeon's up next, and it got poisoned as soon as it came out, and I switched to Kilowattrel. A Hydro Pump did huge damage, and I just started going for Discharge. Unfortunately, it survived with a Slither and managed to finish off Kilowattrel with another Hydro Pump. Luckily though, it was poisoned, which means that it's going to get finished off this turn as well. This is actually going really well, even though I just lost Kilowattrel. Next up is going to be Jolteon, and I decided to send in Talonflame. Watching this back, I'm not really sure why I'd made that choice, because Talonflame's weak to electric types, but she decided to just go for Baby Doll Eyes anyway, so I managed to finish it off. I should have gone for Flare Bits there, but I wanted to boost my speed, and I thought I'd actually take it down. Luckily, the poison was enough to finish it off, so it didn't get another move. She's then going to send in Leafeon next, and Talonflame's really going to shine here. I went for a Flare Blitz, taking it down to half health, and the poison brought it in range for another Flare Blitz to finish it off. This means all that's left is her final Pokemon, Sylveon, and she's going to Terastallize it into a pure Fairy type. This is not great since I haven't actually used Salamence yet, and I probably should have used him earlier, because now he's going to be completely useless for the rest of the fight. Luckily, I still have loads of other team members, so I sent in Palafin, who used his brand new move, Wave Crush. We did half of its health, but unfortunately got charmed. This means we're going to get hit with Recoil from our last move, she's going to get hit with Poison, and then we're going to miss next turn because we were immobilized. She's then going to hit a Moonblast doing absolutely massive damage and get hit with the Poison again. She's now on red health, and we managed to break through next turn with an Ice Punch, finishing off Sylveon and taking down Penny. All that's left now is Arven and Nomura, and we can head down to Area 0. I went for Arven first since he's weaker than Nomura, and he starts with his Greedent. I'm going to start with Kilowattrel since I'm probably going to outspeed it and I can do some big damage early on. A Discharge gets off the paralysis but doesn't quite do half its health. That's annoying since it hits back with a Body Slam. Luckily it doesn't get the paralysis of its own, and I decided to go for a Hurricane next turn. We didn't quite finish it off, but it got fully paralysed and an Electro Ball was enough to finish it. She then switched into Garganical, so I switched to Palafin to set up his hero form. I then sent in Copperajah as he set up the Stealth Rock. That's actually really annoying, and looking back again, I don't know why I sent in Copperajah, since I'm just weak to Earthquakes anyway. We managed to miss a high horsepower, which would have done huge damage, and a Body Press takes out Copperajah. He couldn't really do much there, which is really annoying, but I sent in Palafin with a Surf to finish off Garganical. Up next is Toadscrawl, so I sent in Salamence and went for a Dragon Claw, taking over half its health. Annoyingly, it put us to sleep, but after a few turns, we woke up, hit another Dragon Claw, and finished off the Toadscrawl. That's kind of an annoying Pokemon, and I'm glad to have got it out of the way. Up against Cloyster, Kilowattrel makes light work of it with a Discharge. I then kept it in up against Scovillain and went for a Hurricane, getting the one shot off. This fight is turned very quickly in our favour. He now sends in Mabostiff and Terastallizes it into a pure Dark type. This is not really much of a problem since we have so many team members left. My plan was to get the paralysis off, but unfortunately Discharge didn't, and it went for a Crunch, taking out Kilowattrel. That's a little bit annoying, but I can then send in Glamora, who takes a decent amount of damage from a Psychic Fangs. The Toxic Debris gets set up, but it doesn't really matter since Mabostiff's his last Pokemon anyway. I then went for a Rock Blast and suddenly realised that it was kind of pointless since it did basically nothing. Another Psychic Fang is going to be enough to take down Glamora, which is fine since we still have loads of team members. I sent Talonflame back in, and it's still at full health. Unfortunately, the stones do huge damage and took nearly half of our health before we'd even done anything. I then went for a Flare Blitz to finish it off, and it survived in the red. It then hit back with a crunch, and this is getting a little bit dangerous now. I've only got Palafin and Salamence left. I sent Palafin back in, and we managed to outspeed with an Ice Punch, finishing off Mabostiff and taking down Arven. That means all that's left is the fight with Nomura, and this is probably the only fight in the game where Nomura actually poses a threat against your team. She's going to start with her Lycanroc, so my plan is to start with Palafin and immediately go for a flip turn. This is a bit of a theme in the run, but this is kind of what you have to do when you have a Palafin on the team. It's just not that great unless you set it up. Annoyingly, she sets up a Stealth Rock just like Arven did, which means that our whole team's going to take quite decent damage throughout the fight. Sometimes you can get away with taking out the Lycanroc before it uses Stealth Rock, but unfortunately this wasn't one of those times. I decided to switch into Salamence, who took a little bit of damage from the Stealth Rock, but I managed to get the Intimidate off. She then hit me with a Stone Edge, which I really wasn't expecting, and Salamence got one shot. I then switched back into Palafin, and after taking another Stone Edge, we managed to get a Surf off and take down her Lycanroc. This is a pretty rocky start, and I sent Glamora in up against her Pawmot, which again was a silly mistake since I forgot this was fighting type. For some reason I just thought of it as a pure electric type. Luckily though, we do get to set up the Toxic Spikes, which is going to come in really handy. I went for a Hyper Beam in a last ditch effort to do some damage, and I actually managed to one-shot it. This means I can switch into Talonflame up against Orthworm, and Flame Charge really didn't do as much as I was hoping. On top of that, it then went for a Rock Blast doing huge damage and taking down Talonflame. I should have just gone for Flare Blitz there. I decided to send Palafin back in, and I wanted to finish it off with a Surf, but it survived. Luckily we survived the body press and could hit another Surf, taking down the Orthworm. I decided to then go for a Wave Crash up against the Dunsparce to just do as much damage as I could. The recoil is going to be enough to take him down, and I then switched to Kilowatt Troll to finish off the Dunsparce. She then sends in her Goodra, and I don't really have a great answer to this thing, so I decided to keep in Kilowatt Troll, which again was a bit of a mistake since we got hit with an Ice Beam and one shot. I then sent Glamora back in, and a Muddy Water was enough to take our Glamora down too. We now only have Copperajah, and this is really not looking good. I think we're going down now. Goodra goes for a Muddy Water straight away, and it actually doesn't do as much as I was thinking. An Iron Head actually takes down the Goodra, which again I wasn't expecting, and she decides to send in Masquerada, which is her last Pokemon. She terastallizes it into a full grass type, and thinking about it, there's not a whole lot this thing can do to Copperajah. I hit back with a superpower, but don't quite take it to half health. It is poisoned though, so the poison chip will actually take it into the orange. This means next turn all I have to do is survive a Thunder Punch, which we do with just 4 HP, and hit one more superpower, taking it within range for the poison to finish it off. This is about as close as it gets to losing a fight, and luckily with that poison chip, Meowscarada falls, and we've beaten Nomura. This means there's only one more fight in this entire challenge. At the bottom of Area 0, which does take a little while to get to, I can take on Professor Churro. If you've made it this far in the video, I'd really appreciate you subscribing, but if not, clicking like helps me out too. He starts the fight off with his Iron Moth, and I decide to start with Glamora. This way I can set up the Toxic Spikes early, and I'm also going to do super effective damage with my Rock type moves. I go for a Rock Blast, and I actually realise at this point we haven't had a single Rock Blast in this entire game that's hit 5 times. Somehow we actually managed to get it for the first time in the run, and it's the perfect amount to take Iron Moth down in one attack. He then sent in his Iron Thorns next, and I decide to switch to Salamence. We get the Intimidate off, lowering its attack, and I immediately go for a Dragon Claw. It doesn't do quite as much as I was hoping, and it hits back with a Stone Edge. It did get a critical hit, but I don't know why I keep sending Salamence out against Pokemon that use Stone Edge. It just keeps destroying him. I switched out to Palafin and used Flip Turn to set up Hero Mode, and then went to Glamora, who set up the Toxic Debris. I've taught it Energy Ball for this fight, and I managed to take out the Iron Thorns with one of those. He then sent in his Iron Hands, which is going to be his next team member. Luckily, it's now going to get poisoned thanks to the Poison Spikes, and I've still got Glamora in at this point. We're pretty low on health, so I went for a Hyper Beam, expecting to get taken out this turn. It's also poisoned, and it goes for an Iron Head, finishing off Glamora, but setting up more Toxic Spikes. That's actually perfect since all of his team members are going to get poisoned now. I switched into Kilowatt Troll since I know we'd get some good outspeeding here, and I went for a Hurricane. This should be enough to take it out, and luckily it was. Iron Hands is down and he sends in Iron Bundle next. I go for a discharge and absolutely destroy it with a one shot. Iron Jugulis is up next and I go for another discharge, taking it all the way down to the low orange. A Dark Pulse takes us to the orange, but one more discharge takes out the Iron Jugulis too. Killer Wattrel's an absolute beast. I go for a Hurricane against his Ace Iron Valiant and one shot that as well. I actually don't know why I even used Ampharos earlier. Killer Wattrel's a beast. After this fight, there's a Miraidon versus Miraidon battle, but you can't really lose this, so I'm just going to skip over it. This is going to be the end of the video, and I've completed Pokemon Violet with an entire shiny team. This was a lot of fun, and I'm definitely going to do the same thing for Scarlet next. So if you like this video, subscribe to the channel for more, and stay tuned for my next video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.